Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about Obfuscate, and I couldn't start talking about Obfuscate without showing this picture of the Nosferatu. For me, Obfuscate is a quintessential Nosferatu power. It's probably one that's most effective for him. So I just thought I'd share this picture of the Nosferatu, which always stuck with me. One of the reasons I bought a bowler hat back in the day. But anyway, let's delve into the discipline, because it's not just about the Nosferatu. Obfuscate is the power of hiding and remaining unseen. I say unseen as it's not invisibility. It's a mental power used to trick someone's brain into seeing something different. It's a power I've had a lot with my characters, so I've had a lot of experience with it, playing with it, thinking about it. So in this discipline, in this video, I'll talk about the discipline, the clans that have it, the powers, how it's evolved from Old World of Darkness into V5, mention about Mind's Eye Theatre, and I'll intersperse it with my thoughts, feelings, and any experiences that I've had with it. And over the years, I've played long-term clans, which have been Malkavian, Nosferatu, and Assamite. So I have had it, and I've had it at fairly high discipline levels as well, obviously being long-running characters. Now, Obfuscate is a powerful discipline, almost essential for Nosferatu to move around without causing waves of revulsion and potential masquerade breaches. Also, Obfuscate has a potential to change who people see and hide objects. So it's not just hiding, it becomes quite a versatile power. Now, the clans that have Obfuscate view it and use it differently. The Nosferatu, just as discussed, use it to lean into hiding, allowing them to maintain the masquerade, move around the city. Now, it's worth pointing out that Obfuscate doesn't work on sort of distance. So if I'm watching a live feed of a city centre, I would still, if you were using Obfuscate, I would still see you, because my mind isn't in your presence to be altered, or if I'm looking back on a video recording. So Nosferatu moving around, say, a city centre at night would still need something, if they were particularly revolting looking, to maybe hide that Obfuscate from modern surveillance devices. Now, Nosferatu are also the clan of secrets and spying, so the ability to put around unseen helps them greatly as well. Now, the Malkavians, it's a perfect tool for shenanigans. Beyond that, every Malkavian has their own designs and schemes. Who knows what the Malkavians are up to? Put 3 Malkavians together and you'll end up with 4 schemes developing. Though since it's a mental power, it's worth noting that the other Malkavian powers are generally mental powers as well. So that would be dominate, dementations, kind of had a bit of social, but dominate, obfuscate, and all specs. So actually, by building a mental as being your 7 pick, your strongest attribute set, you're going to build a character which is particularly good using their disciplines. Now, the Assamite are assassins, and so Obfuscate allows them to go about that dark and murderous business. It's perfect power for stalk and prey, and coming out of the Obfuscate and First Strike shadows. On that note, the City Gangrel of the Sabbat have it, and I always see the City Gangrel, the Gangrel and the Sabbat, it's worth pointing out, are split up into the Country Gangrel, which have your traditional Gangrel discipline spread, and your City Gangrel, which have Obfuscate, Celerity, and Protean, which basically makes them the same as the Assamites, perfect urban hunters. The Protean doing aggravated damage in a similar sort of way that a lot of the Assamite Coitus powers can do as well. Obviously that changed in 5th edition to Blood Sorcery. Now, the Setites, or the Ministry as they're known in V5, is the other major clan with Obfuscate. Obviously, clans like Samedi have it as well. They're using it a similar sort of way to Nosferatu. But yeah, so the Ministry is the other major clan that with Obfuscate, and they deal with secrets and information as well. And there's an element of misdirection and mystery with them. So Obfuscate ties into that nicely with their ability to kind of move around, get where they want to be, and generally cloud and befuddle people's minds. Now, when I was writing this, it suddenly became obvious to me that Obfuscate is very much an outsider clan power. So we think about the Camarilla leaders, we're looking at the Ventru and the Toreador. None of those would really lean into Obfuscate. And even the Sabat leaders, the La Sombra and the Zamitzi. Again, Obfuscate isn't really the leaders about being front and centre. These are very much clans on the outside of sort of normal vampire society. So what powers does it look like? So in this edition, early editions and revised just tidied a lot up, but still followed the same discipline path. Each discipline has one power that you build up. Level 1 was Cloak of Shadows. Put yourself into some sort of cover, inside a doorway, behind something, and as long as you don't move, you'll remain hidden. Level 2 is Unseen Presence, which allowed you to walk around unseen, and a person's mind will do as much as possible to ignore you. That's, like I say, mental power. It's you're affecting somebody's brain. So what that generally meant was you would have to go somewhere, and I'd always say cloak. So you'd go somewhere and cloak, somewhere where you couldn't be seen, make yourself invisible, and then start wandering around. The power to vanish in front of somebody comes later on. Level 3, Mask of 1,000 Faces. So this allows you to project the appearance, a different appearance of yourself into the mind of other people. Depending on the success, depends on the amount you can fool people. So 1 and 2 successes, you're kind of just altering wee details about you. Maybe it's just enough so somebody couldn't pitch you again or point you out on a police lineup. Now 3 or more successes, you can start to radically alter the shape of your appearance. Though it's more about, as a power, creating something or someone that's expected rather than crafting a whole new identity. So for example, if you were using Mask of 1,000 Faces, you wouldn't have another persona. What you might do is if you were sort of trying to break into a school at night and the police came around and you had Mask of 1,000 Faces up, you'd look like the school janitor or somebody who the police would expect to see in that situation. Level 4, that becomes Vanish from Mind's Eye. So like I say, level 1 and 2 means you've got to be hidden or partially hidden for them to work. This allows you to disappear in front of others. So it's a great way to escape from a conflict as well. And it's a pretty powerful power. Now level 4 is Cloak the Gathering. This allows you to cast your Obfuscate over others, and it was one person per dot of your stealth that you had. So it's never going to be like a massive, I'm cloaking a load of people at an Elysium gathering, 20, 30, 40 people plus, but a small cabal meeting and gathering or hiding, easily pass your Obfuscate onto those. Now an honourable mention goes to V-Test, in V-Test, the card game. Obfuscate created stealth, and whenever you did an action, an opponent could always block it. Now, if you had more stealth than your opponent had intercept, you weren't able to be blocked. So the Malkavians were particularly effective because they got high damage attacks on an opponent's resource base with Dominate, and their stealth abilities from Obfuscate allowed them to dodge any defenders. It also allowed you to do things like conceal a weapon, which you could use to surprise an opponent during a fight. Again, I used a lot of Malkavian decks in VTES, and I would always throw in maybe as a surprise. I think it was like Flamethrower or something that did aggravated damage. So when they eventually cornered my characters, like, surprise, I'm going to burn you. Now we get to Mind's Eye Theatre. So Mind's Eye Theatre one of the interesting things was when you were using Obfuscate, let's see if I can find a picture, you would cross your arms across your body to indicate that you were under Obfuscate, and the rest of the players had to do their best to ignore you. Then you would also raise a finger to indicate what level of Obfuscate that you had. And there was rules about, I can't find a picture of the recommended symbols, but there was rules about how Obfuscate and Auspex interacted with each other. So people with a higher Auspex would look at your fingers and think, well, I've got more Auspex than that level, so I could test to maybe see through it. Now, of course, with that system, there was always the accusation or concerns about metagaming, and people, oh well, I always do an Auspex scan, so of course I'm going to have a chance to see if the vampire is hiding in the room with Obfuscate. And it's always going to be a tough one to kind of run a live action role playing game. Speaking of which, I am doing some videos at the moment focused on Mind's Eye Theatre. So if you've got an interest in Mind's Eye Theatre and learning more about the troubles and pitfalls and how you deal with situations like this, do look at those videos down. Now, the other thing to note in Mind's Eye Theatre was Mask of 1,000 Faces made you bland and unrecognisable, and we often had badges which said that. Now, you could expend mental traits when you cast Mask of 1,000 Faces to assume specific traits. And the other thing is, from Vanish from Mind's Eye and upwards, allowed you to have a limited amount of talking whilst under Obfuscate. In tabletop, as was written at the start, making sound would break it, but this would allow you to stand behind someone's shoulder and whisper in. So maybe as a prince could have an obfuscated seneschal whispering into his shoulder, or even just creep somebody out. Elder powers. So elder powers started to kind of lean into concealing bigger things. So for example, you might be able to conceal an object and not be in that zone once that object was concealed. So for example, if you were a Setite and you could maybe have your heart removed, put in a canoptic jar, and you could conceal that and leave it, knowing that it was protected by your Obfuscate when you're away from your heart. You were also able to conceal things like buildings, like havens. So you could be living in that creepy house in the block and just have Obfuscate up so everybody avoided it. Another elder powers were the ability to hide your mind or your aura. Now, aura reading is a low-level Auspex power, which we've talked about, which I always thought should have been a high-level power. In a game about plotting and intrigue and personal interactions, a low-level power allowing you to tell whether somebody's lying or not is quite powerful, amongst other things. One of the other things that auras might pick up is if you were a diabolist. And there was other things that were marked out in your aura. So elder level powers allowed you to control your aura and hide your aura or protect your mind. Other elder powers allowed you to really lean into the Mask of 1,000 Faces and create a defined persona that you could always adopt, or even create something so you became an old friend or look like an old friend of the person you were talking to, and you're pulling their mind to pull that information together. So now we come to V5. So V5 powers, you will have different choices at different disciplines, different levels of the discipline. So previously, before, that was only used for elder powers, so the first 5 discipline levels were always set. Then once you got to elder levels, you had different power choices at different levels. So V5, what are the V5 powers? So level 1's Cloak of Shadow is still the same as before, or Silence of Death. So the Assamites have lost their Quietus power, or Quietus power. And Quietus was a lot of powers which felt a bit like thaumaturgy. And the first level power was the ability to create a zone of silence, and it always felt a bit odd and tacked together as a discipline. So in this one, they've got level 1 power of quietus, silence of death. Level 2 is unseen passage, which is as before, and it's the only choice you have at level 2. Now, level 3, there's a power called Ghost in the Machine, allowing Obfuscate to work on electronic media and affected recorded media to a limited effect. Now, that's worth talking about and thinking about, especially with the drawback of Obfuscate not affecting digital media. Now, my only experience of being a player with Obfuscate was when we used the V5 setting out and we ran a Rome game. And obviously this power would have no impact in ancient Rome. The other level 3 power is Mask of 1,000 Faces, to create a forgettable face of someone expected to be there, like we've discussed before. Level 4 is Conceal, which is an Auspex level 3 amalgam power, and it allows objects up to the size of a house to be hidden. Again, that's pulling some of those elder powers in. And level 4, Vanish, Mind's Eye, which requires Cloak of Shadows, which is a lower level Obfuscate power. And level 5 is Cloak the Gathering, again, using Obfuscate on other people. Or Imposter's Guise, which creates a persona of a particular individual, build or gender. Now, there's much I like about V5. I just wish that each discipline had 2 powers per level. And in this Obfuscate, there's a particular problem which I've identified, which is your level 4 choice is either the amalgam, okay, so my character never had Auspex, or the requirement that I would have to have the earlier power. Cloak of Shadows. Now, with the level 1 power, I was playing an Assamite, and my Assamite, Banu Hakim, he was a sandman, so he would crawl around the rooftops of ancient Rome. He had celerity for the light feather, he had the thaumaturge ritual of fly walk, insect walk, and silence of death meant that he wasn't making noise as he's crumpling over people's roofs. So obviously I took silence of death. Then when I was looking to develop level 4 Obfuscate, I was stuck because I didn't have any Auspex and I didn't have Cloak of Shadows. So Unseen Passage is really powerful. I wasn't going to buy Ghost in the Machine because it's ancient Rome, but I had bought Mask of 1,000 Faces, so it's kind of like, well, I'm kind of stuck now at level 4. So that was a bit disappointing. But overall, Obfuscate is a really useful discipline for sure. Actually, I've played several characters with it. It suits the clans that have it immensely. It's a relatively point and click discipline. You're hiding better, you're hiding around a bit more. I've got a disguise on and I'm hiding other people. But it's got me out to several scrapes in game, and it's always worth thinking about if it's an option to pick up some. Even if it was an outer clan, up to Unseen Passage is a really useful discipline spread. Silence of Death, Unseen Passage means that you are very rarely going to get spotted and found out when you're sneaking around. But anyway, that's me finished talking about Obfuscate. Again, if you've got any thoughts on Obfuscate or if I've missed anything obvious, let me know. If you've got any solutions maybe to that V5 conundrum I had, drop us a note. I've got more discipline videos coming out, and I have some videos coming out about Mind's Eye Theatre and Montreal by Night over the coming weeks. So if you're interested in Vampire and World of Darkness contents, do throw me a subscription, do throw me a thumbs up, do throw me a couple of comments. I do these videos as a hobby because I enjoy talking about the things I enjoy talking about. And I quite enjoy talking about World of Darkness and vampires. So you have a great time at the moment. I look forward to seeing you in another video, and that's goodbye from me. Goodbye.